faster than a speeding bullet,
I ran until my muscles burned and my veins pumped battery acid.
more powerful than a locomotive.
An idea is like a virus, resilient, highly contagious.
Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound.
Hey guys, Jared Moon here, and welcome to the Better Humanology Podcast. Today, we have Jim Kielbaso. He's a speed training, strength and conditioning expert. Really and truly, when I say expert, I mean expert. I mean, the guy has worked. He right now he's working with some youth and high school level stuff, but he also works with national level, collegiate level, Olympic, NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL. Guys, getting ready for the combine who need to get bigger, faster, stronger. He helps them do that at his facility. And he has been doing that for a long time and is an expert on the subject. And so I pick his brain about, what he's good at and how he has developed his skills over the years, what it's like to really train elite athletes at that high level, what their mindset's like, and how to walk them through processes, and if that's really any different than the other guy, as we like to call him here on the podcast. But other than that, Jim is just a really great guy. We talk about family life. We dive into all sorts of different stuff here. And I had a really great time talking to Jim, and I think you guys will really enjoy listening to that. So that's kind of your expectation for this podcast going in. Now, I do want to urge you, if you haven't already, go to into3fitness.com, sign up for the newsletter, get our free 7-day barbell in-doc program. Let me walk you through some workouts, maybe change your frame of mind on how barbell training is and how it looks, and how you can get it done. Maybe you are in your garage. A lot of guys and girls around Into 3 Fitness are garage gym athletes, and they know what it's like to train with minimal equipment. But I want to show you if you don't know. So sign up for that 7-day barbell in-doc program, and you can see what that looks like. All right, guys, here is Jim Kielbaso. All right, Jim, I'm super pumped to have you on the Better Humanology Podcast, man. I've been taking notes, copious amounts of notes on you, good questions I could ask given this opportunity to speak with you today. But first, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, you're welcome, and thanks for having me. It's an honor to be part of this, and I like the show format, and what you're doing is fantastic. It's difficult to do a podcast, so good for you for making it happen. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. All right, so everyone who listens to the show, they know that we start off with some challenges because we publish the show on Monday, get their week started off right. So if you could help me out, let's start with a fitness challenge for the listeners.
All right, fitness challenge is 10 minutes of chin-ups followed by 10 minutes of dips. And you're doing as many as you can, and you just see how many you can actually get. And then you can come back to it later. You're going to be sore.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we used to do that all the time, and it's pretty tough. You get pretty messed up.
That one sounds pretty brutal. All right, man. So how about a mental toughness challenge?
I thought about this, and I kind of want to get into like what you guys kind of really think mental toughness is, but my mental toughness challenge for your audience is going to it might be a little bit different. I'm going to challenge people to sit their butt in a chair and write for 2 hours.
Perfect. Yeah, man, that's our mental toughness challenges are all over the place. From taking a cold shower to meditating, it can really be any side of the spectrum that's, just kind of pushing you to be better mentally. So yeah, I think that's great, man. All right, and how about a book recommendation for the listeners?
I've got 2 of them, if that's all right.
Yeah, perfect.
Crush It by Gary Vaynerchuk.
Okay.
I don't know if that's been used before.
Nope.
And The On Purpose Person by Kevin McCarthy.
Okay, perfect.
That was recommended to me years ago by Gary Gray, who is a pretty famous physical therapist, and it really changed my way of thinking. So both of them are very easy reads, but really make you think about things differently.
Awesome, man. I have not read either of those, but they're on the list now. Anytime someone recommends a book to me, it's on the list to get devoured. So they're there.
You will like them. Especially, I think you're going to really like both of them.
Great, man. All right, so thank you so much for taking that co-host position for a minute now. Just for everyone out there, can you kind of, give us a little background on who you are and what you're doing today?
Sure. Without, I'll try to skip as many of the details as possible. I used to be a college strength and conditioning coach. at the University of Detroit, where I really enjoyed it. I was the only guy there for the whole college, and we had 18 sports. So I was working my butt off, training people, and I started teaching classes in sports medicine, and we started hosting conferences. This is back in like the mid to late 90s, and when there weren't many conferences around, and took a leadership role in the NSCA back then, and we did the conferences kind of through them. That was pretty awesome. Back in about 2001, I realized that it was time for me to get out of the college game and wanted to do something. To make a long story short, I got connected with some people here inside a Total Sports Complex, which is the largest indoor turf complex in America. And we put in a training center called Total Performance. And that was back in 2002, before people knew really what sports performance was all about. We were really, we were educating coaches and parents about what we were doing and how it was going to help athletes. And things have changed quite dramatically since then in the industry of sports performance, at least. I wrote a book called Ultimate Speed and Agility. Well, originally it was called Speed and Agility Revolution, and then there was a second edition that was Ultimate Speed and Agility. And since then, I've produced a bunch of different products, video products, books, stuff like that. And recently took over the International Youth Conditioning Association just a few months ago. People may know it as the IYCA. It's been around for quite a while, but the IYCA has certifications and information products for coaches and trainers. We have certifications on speed and agility training and high school strength and conditioning, youth fitness specialists, and then more specialized ones like Olympic lifting and power development, kettlebells. There's a lot of really, really cool stuff and cool people involved in that organization. And it's really the main thrust is to get great coaches to work with young kids and to really put out great information about training so that kids have the opportunity to work with somebody that's a high quality trainer rather than somebody that doesn't really know what they're doing, but says they do. So it's kind of the main thrust of that organization. Does that kind of give you a little background?
Yeah, man, I think that paints a beautiful picture of how much experience you are and how long you've been into, sports performance as a whole and how dedicated you are to it. And you hit on something there that I kind of want to ask you, and that is, what has been the evolution that you've seen, of sports performance or performance in general from, you said you got started where you're at now, specifically in 2002, but even a coach before that. What's the evolution you've seen?
Man, it's been a huge evolution. Back in 2002, when we opened this place up, really kind of what I said, the mission of this place was to bring basically high performance training methods that we were using like with college and pro athletes and bring them to the younger kids, to high school and even middle school athletes. At the time, that was like kind of groundbreaking. Like people weren't doing that. There weren't that many sports performance places out there. So it was very exciting. Today, there's people all over the place doing it. What's very different is that, back 15 years ago, there wasn't like all the information out there, like on the internet. Like you couldn't just Google speed training and have 500 things come up, and you couldn't sign up for 30 different newsletters and read blogs. There was no such thing as podcasts. It was just very different. In fact, back when I was in college and even in grad school, there was no internet. So we actually had. I was just talking to somebody about that the other day. We had to go to the library, look through the card filing kind of system, go find a journal, and then if I wanted to like keep it or have a copy of it, I had to go put quarters into a Xerox machine that they'd have on each floor, copy them, staple them together, and I would have binders. I literally have binders. I'm embarrassed to say, underneath my desk right now, full of old journal articles that I could easily throw away now, because that's just how we did it. You didn't have any other way of learning. Today, I feel like people are the knowledge comes almost too easy for them. So they now, they're like, oh, well, I saw a video on that, so now I'm an expert. Right. Versus, I feel like we'd have to not just read a book. We'd have to take a course from an instructor that was in in front of you. You'd have to go intern with people. You'd have to do mentorships and spend years developing your craft, just to feel like you had any real reason to train people. And today, I feel like there's a lot more people out there that feel like, because the knowledge is so easily consumable, they're just instantly awesome at what they do. And it kind of takes away, I think, a little bit of the process, if you will, of developing people as coaches. So I think things have changed quite dramatically, in the last 20 years of training, certainly in the world of sports performance.
Yeah, man. And one thing that brings to mind is the difference between, and I saw something on your site, granted it was a few years ago, but it resonated with me, is the difference between being, a trainer or a marketer, and how you kind of have to balance both. I think that was something I actually struggled with for a long time. I just wanted to be, and I still have that desire, but just to be the best I can be at, writing programs and helping the athletes that I train. But, if that's all you focus on, in all honesty, that you might not be able to feed your family. You have to straddle both sides. So what have you seen over the years having to be the marketer, but also, and you might have people doing it on your team, but also, try and be an expert at the same time?
Yeah, that was a really hard transition for me, actually. Coming into the business scene as a college coach, I still viewed myself as a coach. So when I would talk to other, say sport coaches about what we were doing, it took me a while to realize, oh, they think of me as a salesperson. I'm trying to sell something, whereas in my head, all I was trying to do is explain how we could help them and what we could do for them. And it was interesting when I realized that they were thinking that way, and it made me start to kind of realize why it's not always super easy to get in touch with somebody, because they're trying to dodge you if they think of you that way. And it really changed the way I thought of marketing. Not so much like sending out an email blast and hoping people were going to buy something. It was more that I had to develop relationships with people. I had to actually know a coach, and I had to figure out a way to get in front of them and make them realize that I wasn't just trying to sell something. I was legitimately trying to help them or their athletes. And when I was able to realize that and start to develop those relationships, the business really took off, and it made it a lot easier to keep things sustainable. We also went through a huge transition, or I did personally, from when we first opened up. I felt like I was constantly selling myself. So I was trying to, I would tell people, oh, well, I did this and I did that and I wrote this and I have trained this person. Well, now, since we've grown, I'm not training everybody. So we went through this transition where I had to essentially say, yeah, I've done this and I've done that, but all my staff have also done these things, and they're fantastic, and you're going to love our program, and you're going to love all of our trainers, so that people felt more comfortable training with the rest of our staff, because we kind of share clients. They come in and everybody gets to train them. And that was a big transition. And I've talked to a lot of other business owners who kind of go through that, where they realize, I'm either going to be training, all day, every day for the rest of my life, or I'm going to have to figure out a way to market the program instead of just me. And that was a big deal, for at least for me in my career.
All right, and so developing your business and your personal professional life, what would you say that you or your business is world class at? Like the best at. Like, what are you guys like focused on? Kind of leading the standard in.
Speed development. And I say that because I've written a certification and I've written a book and on speed training, and that's what people come here for. And that's a kind of, we get phone calls all the time. My kid either needs to get faster or my kid runs funny. Do you know anybody that could help? Well, yes, I do. He called the right place. And our combine training, the NFL combine training, it's all about the speed development. And that's opened doors for me to do a lot of cool things in speed development. So I'd say speed development is kind of the thing that we're amazing at.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I got when I was researching you a little bit more. But I just realized when we were talking, I was like, I haven't fully explained that how badass you are to the listeners yet in regards to that. And so tell me a little bit about the combine training. I watched some videos and stuff, and it looks like it's a lot of fun, man. Like your facility looks amazing. Like I love whether it's combine training or just out in my backyard. I love physical tests, like just like small physical tests. Like I don't know why it's all like ever since I was a young kid. Being tested physically, doing those things have just been fun to me. But tell me a little bit more about your combine training and how that's developed over the years.
That's a great question. And it didn't happen super fast. I thought that we were going to have a lot of basketball players originally because I used to train before we opened this up. I used to train like NBA guys, and I thought, oh, this is going to be how the business goes. But I quickly realized that that we have more soccer and football and hockey players in here, and it just kind of happened kind of organically over time. There was a point where I was just helping a couple guys to go and do their NFL pro days. Well, they did well. So the next year, a couple of their friends would each talk to me, and it started growing. And I don't know, maybe it was eight or 9 years ago, it started getting bigger and more agents were sending people. So instead of having guys that were all say like long shots to make it. I mean, I remember the first year we had guys sign contracts, like how elated I was because it was so exciting. And now, we have agents sending guys from all over the place. And the University of Michigan, a few years back, hired me to go to campus and train their graduating seniors for the NFL Combine. So a lot of those guys have made it as well. And it really just, it happened relatively slowly. And I think that that's probably why it has worked. Because I didn't try to spend like a lot of money marketing it. The marketing was the results that we got. And the next year, seeing guys who trained with me tell their friends, that were coming through, hey, you need to go train with Jim, and people from the Detroit area that would come back. I've had now several guys who I trained in high school, and then they went to college, and I would train them on their breaks and that kind of thing. And then I trained them for the combine or their pro day, and they've made it and done stuff in the NFL. And it's really cool to be able to train guys, from when they're kids, thinking like, man, I wonder if this kid has a shot. And then all of a sudden you're training him for the combine, and he's, I watch him on Sundays, on TV now. So that's been really fun, but it takes a long time, and it's one part of our business. I think that there are places out there that they kind of market all year round and talk to agents all year round and charge a ton of money to train these guys. That's not really how I do it. It's almost all word of mouth. So it's more organic, I guess.
That's amazing, man. And you're obviously very successful at it, getting people results. You have a successful business, and you train people successfully. So what would you say over the years one of the biggest hurdles has been in getting to your level of success?
I think understanding, I mean, you have to be good at what you're doing. So like, it took me a really long time to get good at what I do. But then having other people that can help you also be good at what we're doing. So I have an awesome staff, and I've had some amazing people come through here. And having those relationships with them, it's like literally just before you got here, a guy that used to work for me for several years, and then he opened up his own place and moved and got married and had 3 kids. Like, he just stopped by, so seeing people that you've helped do things is really rewarding. And I think that's been the challenge, is that you have to train other people to do what you're doing so that you can multiply yourself and train more and more people. Understanding business, was something that took a while. Like, I didn't used to sit down and look at a P&L statement and kind of have any interest in it. Now I love metrics, and I love, seeing, what's working, what's not working. With the IYCA now, I have a ton of metrics because there's a lot of online stuff. So, you have to see, how many clicks is this getting and how is it converting? And so now it's like a whole new piece of the puzzle for me that, sometimes I feel like, man, I'm too old to learn all this new software and to get all these new metrics. Like, I just want to do what I'm doing, but it's also really exciting to learn this new stuff and continue to evolve so that I'm developing new skills. And staying current is sometimes difficult over the long haul. I've seen a lot of people do what they do and they just do the same thing for years. We've changed things. We add things to our program. We take things away. I think another challenge is with so much information being out there, you can't possibly apply it all. When you see kids for like an hour and a half, 2 days a week, like you can't put everything you possibly know into that training session. And it's difficult to distill it all down and like only do the things that you think matter the most. I mentioned Gary Gray earlier. I don't know. Are you familiar with Gary?
No.
He's kind of the godfather of like the 3D training. He's pretty amazing. I was at a conference and he was teaching all this assessment and the 3-dimensional stuff and all these things. And afterwards I said, how am I supposed to do all this stuff and still do speed training and do agility training and strength training and conditioning? And he looked at me, he goes, I don't know. You got a really hard job. You're going to have to figure it out. And that's when it hit me. I was like, okay, he's not telling me I have to do everything. I have to figure out what's most important and what's going to work for each person and then take everything else away. So it's kind of addition by subtraction kind of thing, like really getting to the essence of what's most important. And I think that's been, that's a challenge because you learn so much new stuff. Do you just change everything you're doing, or do you, add it all in? How do you work it?
Okay. And, I mean, you obviously are also a guy who wants to get better, or else you wouldn't be in the position that you are in. So, I mean, how would you say that you work on yourself on a daily, yearly, monthly basis? How would you say that you improve yourself?
It varies from year to year and from time to time in the year. I kind of look at my year as still like an athlete. So athletes will have, they'll have their preseason, and then they'll have their in season, and then they've got post season, and then they've got like their off season workouts to work on something specific. Well, that's kind of the way my year rolls also. So my winters are incredibly busy with combine training, and my summers are incredibly busy with training younger athletes, in addition to guys, that are home from the NFL and other sports. But I've got those, but I've also got all the high school and middle school athletes that are in here too. So that summer gets crazy busy too. So I look at my winter and my summer as like my in seasons, and then I've got the post season where usually after combine prep I need like a week or two to I'm still working, but like I'm kind of fried, and I just need a little bit of downtime and start to catch up on things. And then we get kind of into the off season program, which is okay. What are we going to get better at now? And that's when we do like our marketing and program development. And then the preseason is kind of like building up to when the next busy season is. During that off-season time, though, I spend a lot of time reading. I read a lot. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Now, I've really gotten into podcasts the last year or so. I talk to people, so I'll network and discuss things with people who have done it before quite a bit. I like taking on new challenges, so that kind of keeps me sharp, I guess. So, for example, this whole IYCA thing, man, I have learned how to use so many different software platforms and how to get things done. It's been amazing. I'll go through periods of being completely overwhelmed when I'm learning something, and I feel like, oh my God, I can't get this. But you always come out, the light at the end of the tunnel always shines at some point, and then you're like, okay, I get this now, and now I have a new skill. So that's exciting for me, I guess, and that kind of keeps me going.
Do you mind sharing one or two podcasts you enjoy listening to?
Sure. I love listening to Smart Passive Income with Pat Flynn.
Okay.
There's one called The Mentee. I can't remember the guy's name, but I listen to that quite regularly. But then I'll also listen to, I need to remember the names of all of them now. There's the Power Athlete guys. I don't know if you're familiar with those guys. There's a high school strength and conditioning coach one, strength coach, the one that Mike Boyle and those guys do, the Strength Coach podcast. That one's fantastic. So
awesome.
Those are kind of ones, yeah.
Yeah, I'm familiar with a lot of those. Those are great podcasts. All right, man, I'm going to shift gears on you here for a second.
Ron McKeefery, too. Sorry, I forgot that. Ron McKeefery's podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with Ron.
No, that's the only one I haven't, but I'll definitely check that one out.
All right. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. I was saying I'm going to switch gears on you for a second and ask you, so say there's a nationwide curriculum implemented across, all states, all schools. The president calls you up and says you're responsible for one chapter of this new book they're implementing in schools. And every single kid in America, they have to read your chapter, be tested on, and pass before they're allowed to graduate high school. Given that weight, what would your chapter be about?
Oh my gosh. And this is about training, or this is about something else?
This is whatever you want it to be in life. Training, it could be anything, something you want to help shape future generations.
Holy cow. That's a huge question. I think it would have something to do with entrepreneurship and some practical skills. How to set up a business, the basics of setting up a business and getting things started, developing a brand and a list, how to market yourself. I think maybe like some basic business type skills is what I would want them to learn. And I say that because, I've got 3 kids and I look at what they're learning in school, and I sometimes think, man, I remember doing all this stuff, but I don't use any of it. So what would be practical? And, we don't learn that stuff. Nobody teaches you in high school or college or even in grad school, how to set up your own LLC and how to develop your own website and how to do all these things. And there would definitely be something in there about taking initiative and making things happen for yourself, because I think that gets lost. That gets lost in a lot of college programs, and I think people come out of college without the idea that they're going to have to really work their butt off for a long time and make things happen for themselves. So I think that would be, I don't know, that would be a long chapter, but that would be the main theme, I think.
Hey, and I actually a lot of that resonates with me because my kids are pretty young, but I always think about that in the future as an entrepreneur myself. If I want to teach my kids, obviously I want them to do well in school, math, science, all that stuff, but do I really want to push hard on making sure that they know how to build and play their own game, or how to play someone else's game really well, being an employee versus owning your own business? And I don't necessarily think that owning your own business is for everyone, but I think that, like you said, building a brand, some of that basics is so important. Have you, if you don't mind me asking, how have you pressed your kids in any direction? I don't know how old they are or anything like that, but just curious.
I let my kids kind of figure out what they want to do, but I actually did just have a conversation about expenses versus revenue with my 16-year-old last night at dinner, and I was explaining to him how I'm going to use a new service that's going to cost less, and how if my expenses are lower, then I either make more money or it's easier to break even, and when you throw out money to kids, they're like, $1,000?
Right.
Oh my, you get to keep that, that kind of stuff. My middle son, he's 14, and he's amazing at videography and editing and photography. And I really encouraged him to kind of have a business mindset also. So he helps me sometimes with videos. And I try to get him to do more for me and then pay him, like I'll pay off his cell phone bill for the month if he does a video for me. And really encourage him to take it seriously from a possible career in business. My little guy, he's only 8, and he definitely wants to make money. He loves that kind of stuff too. So I think I just kind of drop it in there. I'm not like sitting there teaching them lessons, but I think they kind of watch and see how things work a little bit.
Yeah, and I think just being around you, they're picking up 10 times more than realized. I know that was true of my dad. He was never a sit me down and here are the rules of life, type of guy. But I watched him closely, and a lot of the traits he had or has, I have too now, just from watching. So I think that's awesome, man. I think that's a really good answer to that question. And now I want to ask you, because it helps me, helps the listeners. What's one of the biggest mistakes you've made? Let's say I would like to go in training, either maybe your personal training or training an athlete, biggest mistake you've made, and then also in business.
Wow. I made a lot of mistakes. I don't know what the biggest ones are. I think in business, the mistakes I've made have all been about not really planning properly and thinking something's gonna work really quickly, and then not being able to follow through on things. I've started a lot of different things and not seen them all come to fruition because things take a long time. And sometimes I get impatient, and then if I get a new idea, bam, I'm ready to move on to the next thing. So I've had some things that I think I definitely could have followed through on a little bit more. I think this is going to be pretty funny, and I have to remember some of it. But probably the biggest mistake, I was literally just reminded of it today. So probably the biggest mistake I've made, and that my friends won't ever let me live down, is back, I don't know, this is maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I got a phone call from my friend who was a strength coach for the Detroit Lions, and he said, "Hey, one of the Detroit Tigers called, and they're looking for a personal trainer for their girlfriend. Would you be interested, or do you know somebody that might want to do that?" And at the time, it was in the middle of like combine prep stuff, and I was like, "No, I don't want to be bothered by somebody's girlfriend who's going to be a pain in the butt. This isn't going to go well." And I was like, I don't know. I said, "Oh, let me help you find somebody, but I'm not interested in doing it." Well, I didn't know it, but it turned out that it was Justin Verlander's girlfriend, who is Kate Upton, and and now it's funny because another friend of mine, Ben Bruno, is training her out in LA, and she just is on the cover of the swimsuit cover of Sports Illustrated, and she talks about him all the time, and he's an awesome trainer, and I'm super happy for him. But every time she is ever seen anywhere, like in the media, I've got a few friends that start texting me, and they're like, "Man, you're a complete moron for passing this one up." So I think that may have been one of my funnier mistakes of my career. But other mistakes, I don't know. Was that a good enough mistake?
Hey, that's perfect, man. I like it. Missed opportunity right there. That's
yeah, exactly.
And one more question I have, kind of maybe on the training side, is because I have never worked with the caliber of athletes that you have, NFL players and prepping for the NFL. What would you say the difference is in training someone, who's potentially going to the NFL to, someone who, not that serious, just trying to get a little bit faster, whatever. Not saying one's good or bad, one's bad. They're just obviously very different situations. What would you say the big difference is there, and what is it like working with the high caliber athlete?
There's a big difference between doing combine training and preparing somebody for a sport. The combine training is real test driven. So, we're really breaking down all the testing drills. Like, we spend a lot of time breaking down the mechanics of the shuttle, the short shuttle, so that somebody can shave off a tenth of a second, and we break down acceleration mechanics, on video, and do rep after rep after rep of acceleration work, because it all matters. Like a couple hundredths of a second may make a difference for some of these guys. So it's really, really detail oriented, and it's also it's more like, okay, I want you to do this perfectly. Okay, now take a quick break so that you can do it perfectly again, and then take a break, and then perfectly again. But it's not. It doesn't have the mental side to it, and it also doesn't have the tactical side to it. So when you're training an athlete, they've got the physical part of things that they have to do. So they're going to have to run fast and be well conditioned and all that. But they also are worried about their technical skills of whatever the sport is, and then their tactical skills of understanding the game. For the combine, it's basically like a science experiment. You have complete control over everything. There's not another coach that's doing that's doing 3-hour-long practices, and they don't have to sit in film room, and they don't have to worry about all these distractions of other things. It's just training. So it's a lot more focused, where they're with me a lot more, a lot longer, a lot more often. Usually athletes are with a strength coach, a few hours a week, whereas these guys are with me 3 hours a day. So it's very different, because it's a really condensed period of time. The intensity that we go at, I don't know that it delivers awesome results, because it's a short-term kind of thing. We're working on lots of different physical qualities during that 8 to 12 weeks, cycle. So, it's not like a traditional periodization model, in the sense that you would say, okay, well, for the next 6-week block, we're only going to work on, foundational strength. And then we're going to move into another phase. Well, we don't have time for that. They have to get good at all these tests. They have to be well conditioned. They have to be good at their position drills. They also are rehabbing injuries, so we're doing kind of everything. I don't know that the pace in which we train, we'd be able to sustain for a long period of time. It's difficult. So it works for that period of time really well, but it's different than what we would do with other people.
All right. And do you see any kind of mental breakdown challenges, issues, or anything like that? And how do you overcome those obstacles?
Oh my God, yes. We see a lot of guys early on in the process kind of questioning whether this is going to work out for them, and should they do this. And then usually about the halfway period is when everybody's cool up until that point. But when there's about a month before the combine or pro days, people start getting a little bit tightened up, mentally and emotionally, because the gravity of the situation is hitting them. And then if they run a 40 time that's not as good as what they want to do at their pro day or at the combine, they really start freaking out, and they're like, what am I doing wrong? Can you come videotape me? You got to watch me, and then they want to stay after and do like another 100 reps, because all of a sudden, all the fun and games, it's not fun and games anymore. It's like they look at it like my entire life is on the line here with these tests. And we have to calm guys down and explain that, look, this is part of the process. You're not going to run a great 40 every single time, but you are on your pro day, and it's not all about just the 40 and the shuttle and your bench press. It's also about the body of work that you've put in for the last 4 or 5 years. And we have to calm them down, and then we have to spend time making sure that they feel good at those drills, because that's what they're paying us for. So we got to make sure that if they say, hey, can you help me with my 40? Well, we've been helping you with your 40 for the last month, but yes, we will help you with it, some more. So yeah, we see that. And then the huge mental challenges on the weekend of the draft for these guys. And every year I have a lot of guys come back and talk to the guys that are going through the process, and they all talk about how horrible that weekend is. Because I'm typically not working with like high draft picks. I'm working with guys that are mid to low round or a lot of priority free agent guys who aren't getting their name called, and they get cut and then they get picked back up, and maybe they go on practice squad and maybe they're active roster, and they being able to sustain that mentally is hard because of the ups and downs. You get a call from a team on draft day saying we might draft you, stay by your phone. Well, then they don't draft you, and then somebody else calls and says, well, we might do this, and they don't, and then you think you're going to make all this money, and then all you get is a camp invite, for example. And it's just this big up and down wave of emotions that we try to have other guys come back and help them through. So yeah, we see it.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'd never really thought about it until you were just talking about it. But I've trained myself. I've been into fitness for a long time, but I've never had whether or not I could lift a certain amount of weight or run this distance in this amount of time really be like a life-changing decision, a life-changing marker of whether or not I was going to, have a career or not have a career. So I could see that just being an enormous pressure on an athlete that you work with.
There's been a couple situations. There's one pro day in particular that still does this at Northwestern. They let lots of other guys in. And so guys will come from all over the place because they know that they can do this pro day. But they have everybody run their 40s first, and then they make cuts.
Oh, wow.
And most of the guys that show up to this, they run their 40s and then they're told you're done. They don't do anything else, and they're just gone. And that's really hard for those guys because they are, they've been working their butts off thinking that, oh, this is my chance to shine. And all they do is run a bad 40 and you're done. So there is some pressure on these guys.
That's incredible. All right, man, I'm going to move to our quick fire questions of the show. Are you ready?
I think so.
All right. What is the hardest workout you've ever done?
There was a system called the Frontier Acceleration Sports Training System. It was a speed development system, and they had these incline treadmill workouts, like sprints, and those workouts were absolutely brutal. So I don't know if anybody's ever going to get a chance to do them, but incline treadmill sprint were really, really brutal.
It sounds nasty. I've done some stuff like that before. It's pretty brutal. All right, man. In your opinion, what's the best activity for building mental toughness?
This is going to sound kind of silly, but I think of mental toughness as being able to get through uncontrollable situations, like get through an environment where you don't have control over everything. And the best way to do that is to be properly prepared for everything as best you can, so that you have the confidence that when things happen in a way that you didn't think they were going to happen, you realize like, oh, I can get through this. So I guess proper preparation for whatever it is that you're getting through is what's going to build the best mental toughness.
I think that's I love that answer, and the reason being is I just from a pure physical standpoint, when I first I was in the military, I was active duty. When I first transferred to Air Force Special Tactics, that like your first day there, they were like, "All right, man, because they have their own strength and conditioning coaches, they have the wing commander there. They're going to push you through, like pretty much it's your first day here. They're going to push you through the hardest workout you've ever done in your entire life, and it's going to be really brutal and it's going to be really long." And for like 5 minutes, I was like, "Oh man, this is," I started to get a little bit nervous. I was like, "This is going to suck." But then I was just thinking, I was like, "I've been through some pretty awful stuff." Like, like I think I'm ready to go. And so once I flipped that switch, I was like, "Nah, I'm good. Whatever you guys want to do tomorrow, I'm good." And so, I love that answer, man. All right. So if you could only have one piece of equipment to train with for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I thought about this and I thought, oh, well, it's going to be a dumbbell, but if I only have one dumbbell, that's not going to be very good. So while it may not be like my favorite piece of equipment, it's maybe the most versatile, and it's one of those power block dumbbells that you can change the weights on. If you have a pair of adjustable dumbbells like that, you can pretty much do everything. So I would take a set of power blocks. Awesome.
All right, now the question of the show, what is your best advice you have for becoming a better human being? And this is 100% open-ended.
Yeah, that one, when I saw that on your list, I thought, man, that's going to be interesting. We could talk forever probably on that. But I kind of came up with a couple different things. And the first one was living your life with integrity. And integrity, basically being true to yourself. Integrity to me in my life is everything that I do. I try to picture, like, if my 3 kids all were watching me do something and listening to me talk to somebody and, and seeing what I was doing, would they be cool with it? And would I still be cool with it if they were watching? And if I feel like I could do this in front of my kids, then that's probably okay, and then it helps me live my life with integrity. And I'm not saying, that I live my life like that all the time, but, that kind of helps me, that gives me something to kind of think about, so I kind of picture my kids' eyes, doing, when I'm doing stuff. Like right now, if my kids were watching me, I'd feel like they'd be proud of me, like, yeah, he's talking and he's doing the right thing, but if I was on here, being a jerk or, swearing or putting people down or whatever it was, then they would probably be looking at me like, what is he doing? So that kind of keeps me grounded, I guess. Being authentic, that's something that Mike Boyle had said to me a while back, is just, being authentic and not trying to be somebody else and not trying to do what other people think that you should do. And, just essentially like doing what you think is right for you in your life and being yourself and being true to that. That's sometimes hard to do, but I think that's some really good advice for people. At least for me it is. And then, taking your relationships with your family. My wife and kids are the most important thing in my life, and making sure that I spend enough time with them and tell them how much I love them, and and not get caught up in everything else that I have to do that is more about me. It's really easy to to work all the time, and to get caught up with training people and business stuff. But you have to be able to put it all down and spend time with your family, because when we're all dead, nobody's going to sit there and say, oh, this guy made a lot of money or this guy trained people really well or anything like that. It's going to be your family that's going to be there. And I think with my first 2 kids, I realized how quickly they grow up. And with my first 2, I always thought like, oh, I've got to get them to do everything. Like, they have to roll over, they have to walk, they have to stand, they have to feed themselves, they have to dress themselves, like you got to keep pushing all this stuff. Well, with my last one, he was 5 years younger, and I realized, oh, this is it. Like there's gonna be a time where he doesn't fit on my lap anymore, and then there's gonna be a time where he's not gonna want me to hug him in front of his friends, and there's gonna be a time where he's gonna, he'd rather go to his friend's house than play catch with me. And I see those things passing, and I realize, I have to take advantage of everything, because you never know when it's gonna, when you're gonna get your last hug in front of the class, or you're going to walk them to school for the last time. So I really kind of cherish all those moments a lot more than I used to.
Man, that's some really, really powerful stuff, and hits hard with me, in all honesty. I, having 2 young boys, I know exactly what you're talking about. And, going from that first thing you said about, I do a lot of things online. I have this podcast, I write articles, and I have a buddy who's just getting started, and he asked me just for some advice as starting an online business and whatnot. And I said something very similar to you. I was like, man, I know a lot of people do crazy stuff. Sometimes they do it for, just to get like a response out of people or whatnot. I was like, but whatever I'm saying on the microphone, on a podcast interview, or whatever article I'm writing, whatever information I'm putting out there, now I just look at through the lens of my kids. Like when they're 25 years old, this stuff is probably still going to be around. The internet is forever in some ways. And so like if they're checking it out, like they find, because I think it'd be a while before your kids are actually interested in what your profession was or what you were good at. But I think that'll happen someday, and they'll look back at what you're doing and be really interested in that. And yeah, I love that answer, man. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate you being on the podcast today. Before we hop off, I'd like to give you an opportunity to point people in the direction of your books, any resources, online stuff you have, and I'll jot them all down and make sure they're linked in the show notes when I publish the podcast.
Awesome. I guess people can find me at through the IYCA, the International Youth Conditioning Association. The website is iyca.org. So it's a pretty easy one. If you're in the Detroit area, the name of our training center is Total Performance Training Center, and I'd love for people to stop by, or if anybody wants to come in and do anything, that would be awesome. And then I've got a personal blog where my podcast is and stuff. It's jimkielbaso.com, and that's where all my social media stuff is as well. I always make the joke that if you type in Jim Kielbaso on social media, I'm probably going to be the only one, because there's nobody else with that name except my dad, and he doesn't have all this stuff. So I'm pretty easy to find on social media as well.
Okay, awesome, man. I'll link to all that stuff. Well, Jim, I really appreciate you being on the show. It's been a blast, man.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. It's an awesome show. I like the format a lot.
Thanks, man.
Your best. Losers always whine about their best.